Hello and welcome. So in this lesson we'll just be discussing about testing. So if you do remember, previously when we create a route or make some changes to some route or our business logic in Node here, we usually have to restart our server and then go to Postman and then make a request and check if it works as we expected it to work. But you know, some of these things depend on each other, and sometimes testing them can be very tedious, especially when you start having very large application and making very continuous changes. So unit testing can help you programmatically test your application while you're building it. So what we'll be doing some integration testing. I'll be using some few more tools. So these tools include Mocha, which is a test framework, and then we'll be using the VueJs assertion library, and also be using something called supertest. So supertest is mainly meant for express, like some request response kind of way of making some requests and then checking its response and doing some assertions on it. It's very good, it's very interesting to use it to express, and very simple to make use of. So I'm gonna install some few things in here, and these things include Mocha. So I'll npm install Mocha. I will also install vjuː, which is the VueJs library, which is for assertion, and also I will install supertest and save them in dev. So instead of saving them as my core dependencies, I'm saving them just for development because they are just meant for testing and nothing much more in production. So I'm gonna do this and save in dev. Next up is I will be installing the type definitions for it. So I'm just gonna do like this and say save it -r, which is gonna resolve the dependencies. And then next up is I will just do tsd install instead of npm install. So it's going to go to tsd and pull down the type definitions for VueJs, Mocha, and supertest. It also installs super agent, which is a dependency of supertest. So in here we'll have that setup, so we can see that we have the typings installed. We will go to our package.json. We will see that we have installed it in as dev dependencies. So what next? As we'll be going ahead, we'll be creating simple tests. So I'm gonna later on change some of this test script, npm script. So in here right now I will just wanna set up a simple test folder. This test folder will just hold very simple thing like a directory. Let's say we're creating a test /routes. So I will just create this test /routes, and then I will create a TypeScript file, or let me just create a file. It will be much better because I want to name it TypeScript. So I'll call it the routes.test.ts. So now that we set that up, I will just like to import a few things for what I will be needing. So I'm gonna be needing I'll import vjuː, and I will just use a require statement here and get vjuː. Also I'm gonna import mongoose. So when I get mongoose in here, I will also need some models, but right now I will just do some simple assertions, like we'll set up a way to connect to our database for our test. So if you did remember, we separated our www.ts to connect here. The reason I separated it earlier was because in here supertest is only gonna make use of our app, we're not gonna be listening on any particular server. You can listen, but you might have some port collision sometimes when you are running some tests in parallel and all sorts of things. So it's better to just export the app so that it can be easy to test in your application. So to set up a way to connect to our database, I'm gonna set up a connection string. So I will just have a simple constant here. I'll have a constant, or I can just say a variable that will hold a connection string. So I'll call this the connection string to our database, and this is just gonna be our normal, way of defining a MongoDB connection string. Our default MongoDB port. Actually, you can actually just copy this from your DB connection here, just you can just take this, copy, and you can just paste it here for simplicity. But then instead of sample DB, we'll make use of our sample app DB tests. So this will be a test database. It's not gonna be the same as our main database, so that we can do some cleanup and other things without affecting our main application. So now that we have that there, I will just have a function that will be a helper function that will clean up the database in each and every iteration. So to do that, in Mocha, what we'll do is we'll define blocks of what we want to test. So for example, if I want to test a sign up, I can easily just put it in a block called a describe block, which will just be like a block which will show some boundaries, in between your test. So we can say we want to test a sign up operation. So to test a sign up operation, what I will need is I will have to declare this and then give it a function. And in here, for each of our test iteration, because we are using BDD style, you say it's like, so this particular iteration, it's gonna say that I want to test my API /auth/sign up. So I'm testing this particular route. So in here, to do asynchronous testing, we'll have to pass a function. But this function will take a callback called done, so that it will tell it when it's done and to check it. And here we'll need the request from supertest. If you remember, we installed supertest, so we'll import supertest into our test here. So I'm gonna import supertest right now. So I will import it and alias it to call request, so that it will be much cleaner. I'll call it supertest. So supertest, what supertest will do is it will take your server.ts app, this app we exported, and then it will make some listen on some port and then make some request to read. So we'll see that in a moment. So to get our app, we'll import our app. So I'm gonna just import my app from my server. So I'm importing my app from the server here, and then all I'm doing is that I will be using this request to pass it. So what it does is that when you want to hit it with a request, you pass in the app, that's the Express app, and then it will do its initialization and listen on some port for you, by itself. And all you need to do is maybe send a request, say I want to make a post request to API /auth/sign up, and then when you hit it with the post request, you have to send it some data when you're doing post. So it has a method called the send, and then you can just pass it a JSON object. It can be a JavaScript object that can be automatically turned to a JSON object. So I'm gonna say try to sign up as Affer, and then try a password to be pass. So instead of doing all of this in Postman, we're kind of programmatically setting it up here in Mocha testing. So I have our email, and then I'll say alpha@mail.com. After that, we can do some assertions. So it comes with some assertions. You can see TypeScript is giving us IntelliSense. So you can see that we have like expect. You can expect a number, which this number can be a status, and then it can also take a callback. So I can say expect, and then say I want to expect 200, and then after that I can also say I want to like end this. So when you send the end, it will be like it will make this request. So at this end we'll give it a function, can take a callback, and also can take some extra parameters like error if there was an error, and then a response. So in here we can see that we're setting up it. So if it went successfully, we got a 200. If there was an error, if there is an error, we can just say done. You remember this callback here we're passing in here, it's a standard callback for Mocha. So we can, if there was an error, it will call it with the first argument with the error, which will trigger like an exception. But if everything works fine, then we need to return, so that we'll end the control flow there. So or we can just, if everything works fine, then it means we can just simply call done without any arguments, which will signal that there was no error. So this is just a basic sign up test here, and we can see that we're doing a sign up. But if you note that if we sign up, we're saving to our database, right? So we'll be saving to a database and other things. So we'll need a connection to the database like we have set up here. So to do that, we'll do that in the before block. So before this iteration, before it should start running the test for here, we want it to set up, do like a cleanup and set up, sign up. So we will just have like a function. It's also like a test, so you can just do a function, pass it a done, and also just do your iterations here. So if you remember, we imported mongoose, do mongoose, and then say I want to connect to this database. Our connection string is just our connection string there, and then this takes a callback. So you can see so many callbacks everywhere. This takes a callback, and in this callback what we'll do is that after it has connected, we will like to drop the database for each iteration. So what will happen here is that if it connects, then I want to do like get the connection, and then when I get the connection, I want to get the DB, and we'll call a method on the DB called drop database. So instead of deleting everything one by one, it's more easier and faster to just drop the whole database and recreate on each and every iteration. So I'm gonna drop database, and then our passes are done. So this done callback will be called. If there's an error, it's gonna be pass an error, and then it will trigger an exception. So we can see that we set that up there. Hello. So now after we drop the database, now we can simply make a request and know that everything is settled. The reason why we are dropping this database is to just clean the database up, because for some example we have in our user schema, we set email to be unique, and if we don't drop the database, or clear up and clear the indexes, then we'll have a unique index on email, and next time we run our test it might fail. But that's a long story for now. So in here you can see this before block will be run once for this describe block, and then this test will be run, and if there's not any iterations it will just run them. Maybe if you have multiple iterations here, you can just set it like on the like you can say before each. So this takes a before each, and there is also an after block. You can specify after or an after each. So you can specify after or an after each. You can see TypeScript is giving you some intelligence.